Welcome, everyone. This is Monday, January 10th edition of the NCAA Basketball Daily Dime Show, powered by the Predictive Playbook and presented to you by the good folks over at SportsMemo TV. And I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Chuck, who's very astute at some of these, what I would call off the mainstream type of games, like Bethune-Cookman, for example, which I will honestly admit I don't know even where it's located. But I would take his advice and go with whoever he says. But let's first take a look here, Dr. Chuck, at the Army versus Colgate game. And they are playing at 6 o'clock tonight. The Black Knights are in the Patriot League. This is a Patriot League matchup. Army's 9-6, 8-4 with one push against the number. The over is 7-6. Colgate Raiders 4-10 on this season, 3-9-1 against the spread, 7-6 to the over, 2-1 in home games, 2-6 as a favorite. And somehow Colgate with a 4-10 record, Dr. Chuck, is favored by 8.5 with a big total of 153 points. Where is the betting opportunity in this game?
Well, yeah, you mentioned it. The Colgate is usually and was still projected to be the class of the Patriot League again this season, even after losing Jordan Burns. And I think a lot of the value is zapped from this team. And I think that they're still kind of expecting bettors to remember the Jordan Burns days or just the Colgate, being that team and not being able to name a lot of Patriot League teams, but knowing that that's a name they see on their bracket when they fill it out, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just, they're not the same. You mentioned they're 4-10. That's concluding a 5-game losing streak. You could probably make an argument that the line is so silly that it almost makes you want to go the other way. But Army's actually looked good. They're on a 3-game win streak, and they run up and down the court at about the 30th fastest pace in the country. They're playing defense, which is not something that has been their forte with Jimmy Allen. But I just think you're getting 8.5 points at this point. You can probably play that down to 8. It opened 7, 7.5, something like that. If it goes to 9, grab the 9. I like both Army on the spread, as well as possibly just keeping this close in 1 or 2 possessions throughout and probably having a lead in the first half as well. I love the team total over, if you can find an out that has that, which is 71.5. A lot of, like you mentioned, it's a high scoring total here. And so if we're talking 71.5, then I feel like they're expecting Colgate to go above theirs as well. And I think Army's the team that's more likely to go over their total. Colgate does shoot the 3 a bunch and pretty well. Nelly Cummings they're expecting to be the guy this year with Jordan Burns gone. It just hasn't been the case. And I think this is a stale 2020, 2021 season type line. And I think it should be more like 4.5, 5.5. And so I just think you're getting a ton of value on the Black Knights, even with the fact that they've won 3 in a row and Colgate's lost 5 in a row. I still think this is a tighter game than 9 points, 8.5 points.
Yeah, this is a very confusing game to me because I think the wrong team could be favored. You take a look at Colgate's metrics here. They do move the ball around very well. They average quite a few assists per game, 16.3, which is 40th best in the nation. But they don't get to the free throw line near enough to compete with Army.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things thank you for mentioning it. They're in the bottom 15 of the league again to the line. And that is what you get a lot of times with chucking teams. And I talk a lot in my write-ups about chucking teams and their chuckers and, the VMIs and the like that, they're Woffords in the past, things like that. It works if you got these guys, and they do have a couple of these guys, but it doesn't help, get back on track. If you're not getting to the line ever and getting any free points, you're definitely going to give them up to the opponent.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a very good. It's a value bet, and I like it quite a bit. I would suggest even sprinkling a little bit on the money line.
Right.
Yeah, it seems that's a true golden nugget, Dr. Chuck. Well done.
As the 3-man weave, especially Jim Root will tell you, the Raiders are right until they're not, and that's kind of been the case this season.
Yep, I agree 100%. Let's take a look at my game, and it's one of my favorite mascots. And it's really not a mascot. They're called the Waves. But Malibu, if you've never been there, you got to put it on your bucket list because It's a great law school. It's a great school, period, for academics, but I don't know how they study with the beautiful surroundings there on the cliff of California, looking at the Pacific Ocean all day. But it is quite the venue. And the Pepperdine Waves are 6-10 on the season, but they've had a much more difficult schedule than the San Diego Toreros. You gotta love these mascots. Absolutely. Against the spread, the Waves are 7-8. Against the spread, the Toreros are 5-7. Over under is 7-5 to the under. The under for the Waves is 10-5. Now, they have had major problems shooting the ball. However, I'm here to tell you that the last couple of games has been a lot better than their recent games. In fact, they're averaging 46% from the field versus 42% for the season. So the team is getting better. And they're coming off a game against number 4 Gonzaga. And, Gonzaga is in the West Coast Conference, and everybody gets hammered by them. And it's not a disgrace to lose to them by 34 points, only that they were a 30-point underdog and didn't cover the spread. However, they are a team here that I think is going to easily beat the University of San Diego. And the reason why, Dr. Chuck, is I have a couple little notes here I can read off. There's a betting angle, too, here that the Waves are 9-2 against the spread after scoring 75 or more points in back-to-back games in games played over the last 2 seasons. Plus, they are a near perfect 9-1 against the spread following a game in which they allowed 80 or more points over the last 2 seasons, and they allowed well over 100 points to Gonzaga. I did a little study, too, on teams that allow 100. They do bounce back when they are a double-digit underdog in that game where they allowed the 100. The reason? Because it's recency bias. Public thinks that team stinks, but then when they play the next game against a foe that's not ranked and is not likely to score 100 points, lo and behold, they play well. So that's in their support, too. The Toreros are 0-6 against the spread, and you'll love this one. Following a game in which they had no more than 2 steals. 2 steals in games played over the last 3 seasons. They average 4.8 steals per game. I'm not laughing at them. I'm just not used to seeing numbers like that. In case you were wondering, that ranks 337th worst in steals per game out of 357 Division I basketball programs. So I do think that Pepperdine will easily win this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's double digits and even as high as 15 points. So let's move over to the third pick, but this is Dr. Chuck's second pick. And this is a one that I said in the beginning of the show is very interesting. I don't know too much about the SWAC. As everybody knows, I'm a Big Ten, Big East, SEC kind of focused guy in the hardwood, but I do enjoy listening to someone like Dr. Chuck who knows these conferences and has done very well betting in them. So we have the Southern Jaguars, who are 9-7 on the season, 10-3 against the spread, going up against the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats, 3-11 straight up, 7-5 and 1 push against the spread. The line opened with Cookman as a 3.5-point home dog. The total is 135 points. So enlighten me, Dr. Chuck, and tell me where I should put my money on this game.
Well, you brought it up, John. Drew Martin, it calls them degenerate plays. I talk all the time. Rob Vino and I try to bring it up on Manny's Club. This money spends the same. It spends the same. It doesn't matter if it's in the SWAC, if it's in the MEAC, if we're going Big West. We talked about them last week. It's still the same money. So sure, you could have Nebraska yesterday or the other day. You could have Minnesota yesterday, which I liked, and they lose at the last second in the Big Ten. But you could have a bigger edge and a less tight line in conferences like the SWAC. So you brought it up. We talked about this off air, and I don't want to belabor the fact too much, but this opened 6. I thought that was a small amount short, and then I watched as it just continually dropped. One big jump from 6 to 4.5, from 4.5 to 4, from 4 to 3.5. I don't know if there's any threes yet. I can't find any information across the entire internet, Twitter, fan forums, if there's something going on with the Jaguars. This is just a flat out better team. we're talking, this is a real like solid team that is scary across all fronts. Sure, the SWAC is going to be rated by Bart Torvik and KenPom as the 32nd conference of 32 conferences, and it's rightfully so. This is where a lot of money is made. This is where they go to get their checks. You mentioned some of the things. So I mean, Southern played Louisville, Kentucky, Dayton, Kent State, Rice already, Nebraska, hung in with all of them and beat Tulane and Kent State outright. I mean, this team deserves the spot they're in, and they rightfully are like right in the middle of the pack ratings at both sites. This is a top 20 3-point shooting team in the nation of 358 and a top 20 perimeter defending team in the nation. They shoot over 38% from three and hold opponents under 25% from three. And it's just, the issue with Southern coming into the season is size. They're one of the smallest teams in the entire country. Well, that has wreaked havoc on them, as they are a terrible 2-point defense team, 355th in the country. Well, guess what? They're the same size as a team as Bethune-Cookman, and they're not going to have that problem against this team. They just covered and beat Texas Southern as a 2-point dog, I believe. They just beat Florida A&M as a line that was -2, and this is what that's approaching now. Bethune-Cookman is nowhere in the vicinity of a Texas Southern, even Florida A&M, and I don't understand what's happening with this line. If it gets smaller, far enough down, maybe take the money line. I can't fathom the Jaguars losing. With that being said, take the best line you can get, find the best out you can get. If you're watching this right now and it's 3.5, I think that's amazing. I had this as 8, and I think it might even be further from that. Bethune-Cookman is just, I hate to use adjectives like this, but they're hideous. They're the 347th ranked offensive efficiency and 350th ranked effective field goal percentage in the nation. It's not, it's SWACtion is on Mondays. There's a lot of money to be made. There was a joke earlier that, hey, we finally reached this point in the college season where the game we've been looking for is to be played, and it's Southern versus Bethune-Cookman. Well, no, but there's a lot of games out there that you can make money on. Two of my favorite, in other games, without going too much farther, two of my favorite coaches in the whole country are playing. Mike Jones at Greensboro, Luke Yaklich at Illinois Chicago. Both those lines are wrong. I think you can get that. I didn't say those, but Illinois Chicago -8 or 9 is short. Greensboro probably is going to beat Wofford, and those are a couple other value spots and places that, you don't have to bet the Georgia-Alabama game and hope that Saban loses somehow.
Well, that's a good point. I wanted to mention that, we had that big game tonight, and big profits are not made taking, chances on the big game, like the Super Bowl, for example. And this right here should be the same wager that you would have on a wager on tonight's game. You don't go from betting 500 a game to all of a sudden putting on 3,000 just because it's a championship game and a rematch of the SEC championship game. It's really not a good thing to do. That's right. And it's even worse if you win that bet, because then you think that you're smarter than the market. And believe me, when you start thinking that you're smarter than the market, whether it's financial markets or sports betting markets, you'll get humbled real quick. So anyway, I was looking at this too, and I can't understand why this line is finding money on Cookman. I can't find a reason why. And you said 347th in effective shooting percentage. I mean, they are horrid. They're horrid. And I know there's parents out there whose sons play on this team.
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying, as a group, this team is not one of the better ones, and they're in the worst conference according to KenPom.
Yeah.
So 3.5, and maybe you do 50% pre-flop now, and then wait till closer to game time to make sure that Southern has all their players.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Unfortunately, and we talk about this a lot, about how amazing it is value-wise for live betting nowadays. You can get out of bad situations like on Saturday when Tommy Mellott left the FCS championship game, and it was over at that point. So if you were on Montana State, you had to get your butt out of there somehow, and you can do that nowadays. With SWACtion, you can't always find an out that's going to have a live play, so it's not as easy. But if you have access to all of them or many different outs, you probably can find someone that can get out of it if something happens late, like a Draymond prop from last night.
Right. Yeah. How about that? That was
Still
Well,
not
that's how
paid out.
much Klay Thompson means to him. You know, he wanted to be part of that comeback, and that was quite the scene, to be sure. But
would you pay that out if you were the book?
whatever the laws of the land would demand.
Just on the spot.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, you had to be a true insider to know that that was going to happen. But that's another topic for another day.
There you go.
But we gave out 3 good picks here, especially this last one. And make sure you double check the injury reports when we get closer to game time. I'm sure somewhere there'll be something, some kind of an announcement that tells you there's no injuries, or it tells you who's not playing. And it could be COVID, it could be anything. But I do think that if this line stays here at 3.5 or even goes lower, the money line, like Chuck said, is a bargain. So we're going to keep our eyes on that one for sure. So Chuck, thanks for your time again. As always, it's always a pleasure doing shows, especially when it's just you and I, just a duo. It's kind of fun,
Yeah.
And
definitely.
thanks to everyone for watching the NCAA Daily Dime Show. And take a moment to subscribe and hammer that bell so you never miss another episode of any of the sports shows that we do on the SportsMemo TV platform. And have yourself a great Monday in the sports betting markets. And we'll see you again tomorrow with another edition of the Daily Dime Betting Show with Dr. Chuck and Jesse Schul this time. So until then, remember, bet with your head and not over it. And may all the wins be yours.